and is the one who designed. And the issue we are talking about is a design issue. Now that is triple role. You agree with me? And sir, don't talk about the justice. You know, in America, every president wants to nominate somebody on the Supreme Court of America. Do you know why? Because of bias, future bias.
Well, that's certainly putting it over to the against team. Do you want to respond, Raj?
I just want to say we can't compare South Africa or any other country to the US. I think all of us follow the law, the rule of law, rather, I should say. But I was just going to add, and I think it was said earlier on, and it's the proponents of this motion haven't really presented what the alternative is. And it was said on the floor earlier on. That alternative is that if the engineer does not certify, then the problem comes that there will be, as it was pointed out, there will be more disputes and the projects never get completed. So it doesn't make sense. Surely for 200 years, if this is the way the system operated, you can't break what's not broken, in my view. And also, there's my colleague here, Tanner, mentioned the evolution of FIDIC. But the FIDIC Red, and I think it's a 2017 version, says quite clearly that the employer should not, in fact, interfere with the engineer's certification role. So that is recorded in there. And then there was mention made of other contracts. In my own experience, I can tell you right now, I mean, you need, there's a reason for the failure when we talk about perception leading to a reality. And that reason is where you have an engineer that lacks experience, which the contractor could have done a DD or could have pointed out if there was a lack of experience. Where the contractor starts to, or the engineer starts to act as an advocate for the employer, which they shouldn't do because they should always maintain that impartiality, or rather an advocate in the sense, in terms of fighting the employer's every cause, or where the engineer can't resist the pressure from either party, then you're not dealing with an engineer that's suited to his or her role. And as was pointed out, our engineers are regulated, and when they make decisions, they make it on the premise of fairness, integrity, and impartiality, and we have to stand by that.
Thank you. Just given it, before we take the next question, just to allow a response to that.
Quick response.
Get back to your question.
I think he's made all the points for us. The history of FIDIC revisions, the rise of DABs shows that the engineer cannot be carrying on in this role effectively. And the last point you made about the employer's pressure on the engineer proves that by being able to put that pressure on to come up with determinations that are erroneous, which then lead to a dispute, arbitration, litigation, whatever, that just shows the engineers in a position that they should not be in the first place.
And just to add something very quickly, if we consider, a number of times my learned friend has said that we should continue with this given its long history going back 200 years. I don't think the early 1800s was probably the best era when we were talking about fairness and rights, etc. At that age, you could still go and work in the coal mines at the age of 4. You could sell your children, and I could go on for a long list of things. So I'm not entirely sure that really carries much weight given the significance.
Great. Good. Over to you, the next question.
Thank you. I've been burning to say something. I must say I was shocked. At the beginning, the poll already ran at the beginning, and I think it was about 20% or 78% said the role is flawed. And I can see there is this view that the engineer is biased from the beginning. But so I worked for 10 years as an engineer, and I also did administer construction contracts, and then I've worked for the last 7 years as an in-house counsel at a multinational consulting engineering firm. And I want to give the view of the consulting engineering firm, right? So on these massive projects I'm from South Africa. So on the big projects that you have, expansion of our highways, Mthento Bridge, Musikaba Bridge, if you look at the Lesotho Highlands phase 2, those projects are procured by government. So if you think that the engineer is going to make a determination because I want to get new work from this client, that is a flawed thought because it's a public procurement process that we need to go through. We always say that a summons is the new invoice. We don't mind suing clients who don't pay. we need to get our money. So, and then we follow a government procurement process. This later on, if you want to win new work. The same with the determination of the engineer. You do your determination impartially, but you don't consider are you going to get new work or not. But I wanted to just also make you think of the fact that the professional engineers are in many instances, when you get like the FIDIC engineer, that company is in many instances also doing the construction supervision. So during the project, the engineers actually form a relationship and a friendly relationship in many instances with the contractor. So you are thinking now, oh, you're getting paid by the client. Meanwhile, when that FIDIC engineer goes to site and he meets with the contractor and his colleagues are on site daily doing supervision and there's measurements being done, that is a very strong bond being formed between the engineer and the contractor, where it's not the same between the engineer and the client. So to just believe that the engineer immediately has got this connection with the client is flawed. And then I just wanted to say, just like an expert witness would not want to, give bogus evidence, when you are or a bogus opinion, the professional engineers, like has been said many times now, in South Africa, you're registered under the Engineering Professions Act, and you have to comply with the EXA Code of Conduct. And in many instances, engineers has come to me to say, I've done this determination and the client is very unhappy. And, it's not, engineers don't just want to budge because it's their own professional stature, that's now at stake, if they just make a decision because the client is unhappy about it. Yeah, so that's the view from a consulting engineering firm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, practical views, and having been through the process. Any comments from either of the team on that statement?
Just very quickly, just on regarding the issue of engineers working for the state. You may correct me on the statistics. I think, as we stand at the moment, about 78% of all work that's given to professional engineering firms in South Africa comes from state bodies. 78%, and 22% comes from the private sector. So when engineers are trying to act in their best interest and acting in favor of a party, they very much have that in mind, and that's been certainly my experience, is that has been a massive influence on engineering firms, is the fact that they feel that if they give a determination against the state, that they're not going to get further work from the state, and they only have another 22% of the market to go to if they don't work for the state.
Thank you.
Can I just quickly respond? One of the things that I've noticed is that employers, believe it or not, respect engineers who are able to hold their own. They trust them more. They feel that even if there are decisions that are perceivably against them, or at least that they have to pay money, if they feel that the engineer has carried out their role properly, then actually the likelihood is that they're not going to retain them in the next project. They will actually retain them in the next project because they've done a proper job. And if they've done a proper job, whilst they might have had to, the employer might have had to pay something out, the fact is that all of the other aspects and all of the other role of the engineer, a competent engineer doing a proper job is going to do a good service for the employer. And in those circumstances, it's perfectly reasonable for the engineer, when doing its job, to expect the next job rather than to think that they'll get sacked.
Thank you very much. I think let's take one last question. We have actually run out of time, but let's take one last question.
Good evening, everyone.
People asking a question at the same time. So,
yeah, thank you. Thank you to the panelists. It's such an incredible debate here. So my understanding is that the certification by the engineer is one of the very first steps in the dispute. Considering that there are review processes and that the decision by the engineer will not be final, would you still maintain that the process itself in terms of the FIDIC is flawed?